everybody that's here today. Wonderful. So many people could join us.
Yeah, the amount is impressive. We got 47 people on the call, which is amazing.
Very nice. Very nice.
Wonderful. So happy that everyone could find it. I've never seen so many people on my call, so. That's the first. That's wonderful. Thank you for allowing us to write the Dutch translation. I hope it pleases the Dutch readers. It certainly pleased us to do it. It was wonderful work, and we love to do it really. What we would like to do tonight, we haven't made a plan really. We just do this as it emerges, and if anyone has a question, just raise your hand and I'll give you some room to ask questions on the book, or any other question. I think that would be wonderful.
Can I ask the first question?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, like Sri was saying, we that translating the book allowed him to see things on a new and deeper level. And I had the same experience. And I imagine that you had the same experience while writing the book. So I was really curious, what did it bring you fresh or new, the process of writing it? It's a question for both of you.
Well, ladies first then.
Absolutely.
Well, just like the process that you went through in slowing down to try and understand where we were coming from, what we were pointing to, that happened with Dicken and I. We both had, been studying this understanding for a long time for Dicken, not so long for me, just a couple of years, but we both had a sense of what it was and also ideas. And so by talking about it, it slowed us down. And every time we would talk about a subject, it would slow us down and we would both see something new about it. So we came with both our ways of seeing things, but then in talking about it, very often we'd just be talking for we'd have a 2-hour session on Skype and we'd just be talking about something. But it would always enrich us. And then we would either write something from that talk or we would just leave it and let that percolate. And then next time we would maybe write something. So we really allowed the process of one voice to emerge. We didn't want it to be Dicken writing some and my writing some. We wanted something to be one voice coming forth.
I'm dropping right back into that space that Natasha and I were in when we would have our talks. And we had no set schedule on purpose, because we wanted the book to be able to come to us fresh. I mean, I had been studying for many years with Sid Banks, and it would have been easy to just talk from my intellect about these ideas, but we both were committed to dropping back into the unknown over and again to see what would occur to us that was fresh. So here we were writing a book about how we're all connected to a deeper intelligence, the intelligence of life itself, the intelligence that knows how to create everything. I mean, I look out my window right now and the trees and the sky and the flowers and everything has come out of that creative space. And so here we were writing about what good news it is to realize that we're connected to a deeper intelligence that knows how to create and operate the universe and everything in it. My new little puppy is being lived by this intelligence. And here we were writing about it, and it was powerful to see how the more we trusted in that quiet not knowing and what came out of that, the better the book became. And so, Elena, to answer your question, what I learned most was a deeper trust and faith in wisdom, and how wisdom allowed Natasha and I to do something I hadn't really seen done before. When you have two authors, you have two very different voices coming together. And a lot of people, when they write a book with two authors, they take turns writing chapters, or they'll say, and then Dicken says, and then Natasha says. We would get quiet together, often for long periods, and something new and fresh would come, and it had to feel perfect to both of us or we wouldn't use it. And if either of us said, I don't know, it just meant it hadn't been written yet. So we had to get quiet again. And then wisdom would keep bringing up new versions until we found one that we felt like spoke as one voice for both of us. So the whole book literally was written by the two of us with one voice, but the one voice was not either of us, it was wisdom. So it was very powerful. I mean, this has implications for relationships, of what it means to be united in a relationship from a deeper wisdom that speaks through each of us in a way that brings us closer and closer together. So my relationships with my wife and kids and grandkids just kept getting better and better. I mean, I think that's why it's called wisdom. If it didn't move human beings toward greater connection and love and well-being, it wouldn't be called wisdom. We'd call it, I'm connected to stupidity or ignorance, or it's wisdom is what brings us well-being, it brings us love, it brings us connection, it brings us creativity, it brings us new and fresh. And so the more any of us live that, the more Natasha and I lived that, the more we were taught about that by wisdom itself. So the deeper our understanding went. Took 2 years to write the book, and it was a constant journey of going into the unknown and then being taught, being guided, trusting more in that, so that when difficulties happened, we knew that if we got quiet, we would be guided. And that's been really true. We've had some challenges in each of our lives since we wrote the book, and that having that faith and wisdom has been, I wish that on everybody. So that's why we're interested in continuing to spread the word, because these principles are universal to everybody.
I think one of the things I wanted to add on to what you said beautifully, Dicken, is that there's the trust and wisdom. There's also, I felt like we both became even more sensitive to when it wasn't wisdom. because Dicken and I also love talking intellectual. We love reading books, and we've read tons of books, and we love philosophy. And so we could easily spin up in having fun with it, but it wasn't wisdom. So we also, both of us, got quite sensitive to when one or the other was speaking from intellect and went, no, that's not the feeling. Because I wasn't always aware if I was coming from an intellect, from a concept, and then Dicken would say, doesn't feel right, or the other way around. So we could stop each other. And another beautiful thing that was also true was we never took it personal. If I said to Dicken, you know, that doesn't feel right. Here I am 2 years into the principles, and Dicken is, 20 something years. And when I said that to him, he just went, well, okay, well, tell me. So there was a curiosity towards the other person, instead of him saying, look, dearie. Like that would have helped, but that's another story.
You know what we did instead? We'd either go for a walk or have tea and chocolate biscuits.
Yeah.
And then in that quiet, something new would come. You know, it might be interesting just to say, we didn't talk about this in the book, but if we didn't like something that was written, that either of us wrote or that we wrote together, we didn't try and rewrite it to make it work. At first, this drove Natasha crazy, because I'd say we'd spend all this time writing a chapter, and I go, you know, this just doesn't have the right feeling. My preference was throw away the chapter and start over. And Natasha said, well, I'll just save it. And then if we need it, we can come back to it. And it was so funny, but pretty soon we both learned that the new and fresh version was so much better than the old one. We were glad we didn't try and keep reworking, because when you rework, you use a lot of intellect to rework it. And so we would rather throw away a lot of our work rather than not have it have the right feeling.
It could have been 380 pages, Dicken.
Longer. Unbelievable how much we saved.
Yeah. No, it's true. What we published was the essence. And I've been reading the book quite a few times since, because I translated into Danish. I recently tried to make an audio book out of it, where I was speaking it. And we've done so many book clubs, both of us. So, and each time, you know, when we finished the book, we talked about, oh, in a couple of years, we'll go back and we'll, you know, rewrite it or review it or something, make changes. Every time I read it, I'm like, oh, it's still true. It's still fresh. Sometimes I've even forgotten some of the insights that we wrote there, and I feel like, oh, I've got a new insight, and then I read it on page 74. It's like, oh, I just thought that was new and fresh, and there it was in the book. So there's something about when wisdom comes through us and writes or speaks, whatever it is that we do, it's so timeless. It just resonates with people on such a deep level that it doesn't need to be changed. So we're very happy with how that came out, and the collaboration that taught us so much on so many levels.
I'd love to hear if people have any questions about anything. Natasha and I are not shy about talking, so we could talk on and on and on until we run out of time. But I'd love to also have dialogue with people, or respond to any questions you might have. The principles are simple, and as you understand them, they don't get more complicated, they get ever simpler. It's been 33 years I've been studying, looking in the direction of where life comes from. And there's no end to what can be revealed to people through insight. No end to what's possible. And so you keep having the same insights over and over again, but simpler and deeper. So we'd love to take this any direction people would like.
Can I ask you a question, Natasha and Dicken? I originate from management consultancy. I've been active for over 20 years in management consultancy. And I understand there's an enormous value of the principles exactly in that field. Because we can teach from the principles people to get into their wisdom. And you just referred to it while you were talking about how you wrote the book. Yeah. Is you got in together in the wisdom. And that's one of the things that, for instance, Joseph Jaworski wrote about in his book Source, where he says we have to teach our leaders to learn to get into their wisdom. Yeah. In groups. But the problem is they really don't know how to do that. What they do now is they send people out in nature, and they have a revelation there sometimes, but they never structurally learn how to fall back. As I've noticed, I can if I want to, I can fall backwards into wisdom and let things come up. And I think that's very, very valuable for leaders nowadays who are faced with issues they can't solve rationally. And they have to go into their wisdom just to get a creative answer to issues you can't solve because you don't have all the variables. Could either of you speak on that?
Sometimes one of the questions that I use in groups is I ask them, where do your best ideas come from? And they kind of get quiet. And then they'll answer in the shower, walking my dog, when I go on my run, when I sit on the beach, when I, something. None of them ever says, it's when I'm in a brainstorming session and we really am trying to work it out. So I think that people intuitively know that there's something that comes out of a quiet space. Nobody's pointed it out to them before, so it's kind of new to them when I point it out. But it's so intuitive that they don't struggle with it. They don't think that it's strange or woohoo. They go, oh, yeah. So how many showers a day? No, but it's just that it's what we're talking about. The principles are living each and every one of us. It's who we are. So intuitively, we know. It's just that we've been brought up in this conceptual world that's allowed us to have concepts and thinking and how do I solve and what do I do? And so we're not used to coming back to the source, coming back home to where the answers are already waiting to come up, to arise from a quiet mind. So there are different ways to do that with groups that I do, but it's mostly just, it's not actually doing, it's pointing to what's already there. They just haven't seen it yet because nobody's pointed it out.
I mean, any of us who have been learning the principles, we often have a long wish list for all the people that we wish understood this. And the list can get longer and longer and longer. Oh my God, if politicians knew this. Oh my God, if all the people who are about to commit crimes knew this. Oh my gosh, if anybody who is struggling knew this. If my parents knew this, if my wife knew this, if my husband knew this. Well, Sid Banks was insistent. He says, if you want to help the world know this more, the best way you can help the world is by you learning this. And I saw in my family, when I learned this, it affected my whole family, and they didn't know the principles, but we are influenced by being around people who become better, more present, better listeners, more resilient, get over upset quicker, more hopeful, more loving, more kind. It influences the environment and people. I've done trainings in some of the largest companies in the United States, and I've seen one person in the room affect the whole room. You know, there's a saying in English that one bad apple can ruin the whole barrel of apples. There's very little understanding how one good apple can turn a barrel of wilted apples back into healthy apples. And I've seen it happen over and over again in a family, in a company, in a group. One person with understanding. You get 20% of people in a company with this understanding, the whole company becomes a healthier company. Right? So I see this as what's happening now in education. I see it happening in policing, in prison reform, in governments, and it's every area is, as one by one, people raise their own level of consciousness, it creates a sphere of influence. And there's a ripple effect that happens. And then also on a deeper level, it changes the whole, as one part of an ecosystem gets healthier, the whole system is a healthier system. So we're also affecting people that we don't even know as we become more wisdom-led, more responsible for our own state of mind, more resilient, more present-centered. Oh my God. It's a quiet revolution that's happening from the inside out, as our friend Michael Neal likes to say. It's changing the world, not outside in, but inside out. When I watch the news, I can get very frustrated. But when I feel frustration, now that's an invitation for me, as you said, Sphere, to fall back away from that thinking into this inner quiet space of presence. And then I feel even more inspired to bring love and understanding into the world. And so I see that's how the world is going to change.
Beautiful, thank you. Anyone else who wants to ask a question?
My favorite questions are the ones you think are going to be stupid. So,
I think Faber has a follow-up question. Go ahead, Faber.
Hi, Dicken. Hi, Natasha.
Hi.
hello.
Hello. So, where am I gonna start? So today, during the day, I noticed myself falling into a feeling like, I guess, the coming home that you are talking about in the book, and where over the last few months fell back into trying to fix my mental state, trying to work with my fear myself. I saw how in the things that I want to do or in my mental activities, I was just like, yeah, like taken care of. I was when I tried to, or when I didn't try to do it myself, I was taken care of in what to do or how to do something. And I noticed for myself that at some point I went back into my intellect and thought, oh, okay, so I need to like back off and let like something else take over. But then I noticed, oh, but this feels weird, because then I tried with my intellect to back off, like surrendering from my intellect, kind of. So I was wondering, like, I remember one talk from you, Dicken, like I think it was 2 months ago, where you mentioned 3 words. You said silence, feeling, knowing. So I was wondering, like, yeah, if you, one of you or the both of you, could speak to this.
Very, very, and just an observation, most adults, when they start feeling insecure or upset or stressed, rely on their intellect and try and figure out what to do, how to respond to it, how to deal with it, how to feel better. So when most adults feel tension, they do even more thinking. And as people begin to learn that it's that thinking that's creating this tension, there's a natural tendency to begin to let go of more and more of that thinking rather than do more of it. We begin to do a little less of it. And when we do less of it, there's that silence, there's more quiet, our mind isn't so noisy, there's quiet of being present. And then our feelings start to relax a little bit and open up. That's the feeling. And when people are present and their feeling is opening rather than contracting, people have more common sense, more knowing, more intuition, and just have a better sense of how to respond to some situation with more common sense. And that's built into everybody because that's how we work. And so I'm glad you're beginning to see that for yourself. There's so much in what you were saying where you were saying, I was getting caught up, and then rather than trying to fix myself with more thinking, I fell back into the now. And then I started to have more sense about how to move forward. And it's so simple. It's so beautiful. So as people gain more understanding into how our minds work, we begin to find a balance. But this is what I'm finding. This is very fresh for me. Any of us, when we get too caught up in our intellect, get out of balance. We get uptight. Anybody. I don't care how smart people are, what age they are, what color they are, what sex they are. All of us can have a tendency to over rely on our intellect, and we get out of balance. And when we get out of balance, the system works perfectly. It creates tension, which is a friendly indicator that we need to let wisdom weigh in on this. So the tension, it helps us. Thank God I feel tense and stressed. If I know that's me holding thought in my intellect and thinking it's true, when I fall back from that, that thinking softens, my feelings start to open, and this deeper intelligence brings something new and fresh. And it's very practical. But then we have a balance between wisdom and intellect, so you get the best of both worlds, as Sid Banks says. I love that. I love helping people find greater balance.
It's so ordinary, Faber. We all fall into our home because it's always with us. It's so ordinary. All through the day, there's times when we fall into that space and this beautiful feeling arises. And then we all get caught up by something. And then, oh, where did that beautiful feeling come? How do I come back? You know, the amount of time people ask that question, how do I come home? Like, we're already there. And so just realizing it. So when I hear you saying, it was like you were saying, you were trying, oh, so I just have to let go and it becomes a technique.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't need techniques because we're already here. That's all we need to see. And so when we start seeing the ordinariness of us actually living from this space, so this is where we live. And then sometimes we get caught up in our intellect. It's just seeing that. Then, oh, I got caught up again. All right, go, do whatever you're doing. But it's the realization that this is who you are. You're always home, but for your thinking.
Well, that's really that's really helpful. And so, well, I think one thing that was like a conflict within me for the last 2 months is Michael Neal made a video in which he talked about how to live. And I guess with this, I got so much in my intellect, what you say about the technique, like, oh, I need to get present. Okay. Or I need to find the space. And every time, like every few minutes, I try to come back to this and try to do this. So it became so much of a doing instead of a being, I think.
Yeah, that's very common. I mean, anybody that starts learning about this, it's like when you learn how to ride a bicycle, if you try and memorize everything you read about how to have balance, it doesn't help you at all on a bicycle. So we're trying to find psychological balance. And at a certain point, you get a feel for balance on a bicycle. That's an insight. It's the same with finding balance in our life. As we learn about these principles, we have insights that help us get a feel for how to live without having to use techniques. You just get a feel for it. Like Natasha says, you feel when you've walked away from home. And then you remember that home is right here, always available, and you relax into it because it's always here. And you're back in balance. And then once you start to get a sense of that, you don't need to be told how to. Like, no one has to tell me how to ride a bicycle. I don't have to keep being reminded by people how to do that. Once you have insight, it stays with you, but it's a matter of the heart. It's a matter of intuition. You get a sense. So I don't think about the principles much. I go about my day. I'm living in the now. I'm enjoying the moment, and then I'm not enjoying it. And if I know it has something to do with thought, it just brings me right back into the now, and I go about my day. And that's the beauty of insight. Once you gain insight, you can't lose what you gain. Just like when you learn to ride a bicycle, you can't lose what you gain about balance. And then you have another insight, and you can then balance riding your bike down a steep hill. And then you can have insight and keep your balance when you're going over a big jump. Right? And then you go, okay, I got that now. Right? Wisdom is the teacher. It'll help us learn through insight how to have an easier time of anything. Anything. So we come home because when we're home, that's the open doorway for wisdom to guide us intuitively and from the heart, as opposed to trying to guide our life from our intellect. Reading another book about balance on a bicycle doesn't help anybody. In psychology, I read every how-to book that was published, and I got more and more confused because pretty soon I had 50 techniques for every occasion. It's like, okay, which one do I use and which one's best? Oh my God, and trying and efforting and trying and efforting. And Sid Banks comes along and says, you already have everything you're trying to get to. And when you realize that, you'll just relax and then it'll happen. No technique. I didn't believe him. I had to find out if that was true. And so I spent a long time now to be able to come here and say, I can guarantee you it's true for any of you. I know that you won't be able to convince me otherwise.
Thank you. That's been really helpful.
Great question. Thank you.
Anyone else? That's good.
Hi, Natasha. Hi, Dicken.
Hi.
I've got a question about free will. I read in your book that Sid tells us that you can use your free will to choose which thoughts you give attention to. But I heard him also say, I guess it was in one of his lectures, you've got a free will, but you better drop it. And it looks like a contradiction. And my question is, does it mean that he, can it be that he meant it's helpful to use your free will to choose which thoughts you give attention to, but on a deeper level, it's better to surrender because mind will lead you? Or can you say something about that?
Yeah, it's always a fascinating question. Go for it, Natasha.
Yeah, we had many fun talks about this because it's something that comes up a lot. So the way that I see it is, it depends on where we're looking from. Who we are in essence is formless, is free. No will is needed. Will is something that we do with the intellect. We can choose to eat chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream, or we can choose to think one thing, or we can choose to distract ourselves. So we have on a personal level the ability to choose different things. So if we look to that level, then we do have the ability to choose something. We can go, I'm not feeling good, I'll go for a walk. That always helps, right? That's helpful. But our essence, that which we are in essence, doesn't need to do that because it's always at home. So I think that was the two levels that Sid was speaking about. And that's why it sounds like a contradiction, but it's two different levels that he talks to.
Sid's like to say, I'm not talking to you, your personality, your ego. I'm talking to your true self, your soul, your being. So when Sid would say, you have free will, the you he's talking about is your infinite, divine, universal self has free will. I watch flowers in front of my window grow, and then a choice happens by the intelligence of life that turns the flower to the sun. I watch my puppy run around the yard, and then he is moved towards sounds and movement, right? I watch myself when I fall out of my ego be chosen and moved in certain directions. And it fascinates me. So sometimes if Sid was talking to someone who was using free will as, I have to make decisions to decide how to live my life, he would say, there is no free will, stop it, surrender. And someone else who's going, oh my God, I'm being lived, I'm being chosen to move in this direction. It makes sense for me to go this way and not that way. He's going, yeah, that's your free will. Isn't that beautiful? So,
Thank you.
It's the most
Wow.
beautiful thing when we live in harmony with the principles, and we are moved by directions. It's sometimes I get the sense that whenever we do something creative, writing a book is one, but I see somebody who has an instrument behind you, Esther, and if you're playing an instrument or you're a painter or a sculptor or something, when you align yourself with the art, with that wisdom, and it moves you in a certain way, because you can do a painting like that comes from the intellect, and it can be precise, and it doesn't necessarily touch you to look at it. And then you can be moved to use this color or that color. You can play this note or that note. And it's a movement. And it's such a beautiful feeling when we allow ourselves to live in that harmony. So I think we write in the book a sentence that my will is thy will? Seems to, at least we've had that conversation. There's something when we align ourselves to not a will as such, but the intelligence behind all of life. So we're moved like the flowers, we're moved like nature to go this way or that way, or it's the most beautiful feeling I know.
I love, my wife's an artist, and I love watching her paint. Unbelievable. She won't paint while she's doing a lot of thinking because it never comes out right. So she'll listen to nice music, or she'll sit quietly, or she'll watch something or read some poetry or favorite poet. And when she gets really quiet, the painting starts happening. And then the same with us writing. If it doesn't look quite right, she just gets quiet, and then she's moved to make a change. And it all happens very naturally and organically. And she'll say, when my mind is quiet, I make better choices with my painting. My clients will say, as I try less to make my decisions, and my decisions are being made through me by wisdom, I feel like I'm more in control of my life. I'm making better choices. You see, we're just using language to talk about, I feel freer. I feel like I have the free will to go here or there. And it's just poetry then, trying to express an inexpressible thing that happens. The intelligence of life knows how to create and move life toward thriving. And when we get quiet, we get, as Natasha said, I love that, Natasha, is that getting more aligned or in harmony with the way life works. And so we become more, the principles, we become wiser, more aware, and more creative. Mind, consciousness, thought. Why is that? Because it's the very nature of life itself, not just of us. It is the nature of us, but it's also the nature of life itself.
I recognize the feeling. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. I used to dread getting that question now because I'd try to figure out how best to answer it, and then it'd get a little confusing.
Anyone else? I can only watch the first screen. We've got 3 screens now. So if you want to have a chance now to ask a question or make a remark, now is your chance.
I remember one time Dicken and I had come to a place, we felt a little stuck. Dicken was in Hawaii with his wife having a vacation. I was at home in Denmark. And we both at the same time had an idea of how to move forward. It was so interesting. So Dicken, he wrote to me, I have an idea. And I wrote back immediately, oh, me too. This is my idea. And so because you just said, I have an idea. And I actually wrote what it was. And then you wrote back, I'm dying, look at my notes. And then he sent me his notes. It was like word for word. It was almost identical. It was exactly the same idea on opposite sides of the world. The way wisdom works, there's no distance. We really had the experience of what Sid was talking about when he said it's all one. Time, space, and matter is made up by intellect. It doesn't exist. There's no distance. There's no time difference. There's no physical distance. There was one mind. So we'd often joke that we were one mind in the 2 years that we were writing. It happened so many times, I can't even count it. But that was just so funny because we were so far apart physically that it was just incredible. It just speaks to there's something going on here. What we're really trying to point to is this hopeful message that there is something that we can all sense when we become quiet, because it's who we are. We don't need to do anything to be who we are. If I ask you to stand up and take one step towards yourself, where would you go? Right? You're already here. It's the most intimate part of who you are. And so when I drop into that space and Dicken drops into that space, there's a knowing of the next step. And that was in our collaboration, but this is true in relationships and friendships and in collaborations at work. When we drop into that space together, we collectively are informed by wisdom. And that's a really hopeful message that we don't need to be anyone special. We don't need to read anything. We don't need to do anything. It's already the most intimate part of who we are. That's hopeful. We already have it. And we'd love to take a couple of more questions if there is. And yeah, they are just that just came out.
It seems our biggest problem is get out of our own way and just accept that things are the way they are. Really.
Yeah. As we get more familiar with this space metaphorically within, It's not really within our bodies, but it's just beyond our intellect. When we get more familiar with that space, we're drawn to it like magnets, or like things are drawn to move toward the light. We just begin to find ourselves. My wife says that she sees me all during the day. I just sort of stop thinking and look up and around, and just, that's why Sid says we're a thought away from our well-being. We're a thought away from being in the now. Even when I've worked with people who are in extremes of feeling troubled and difficulty, they're a thought away from presence in all moments. And that's our true self. That's where anybody starts to feel more present, more comfortable, more relaxed, thought away. Sid insisted. One time he's talking to a group of women who had had very troubled lives, and they had come across the principles and were very, very interested because it had already been changing their lives, because they were starting to wake up out of their troubled thinking into the comfort of the now, and then finding deeper feeling and guidance from wisdom. And Sid was saying to them, you're one thought away from your well-being at all times. And then for the first time ever, I heard him say, do you know what that thought is? And I'm going, oh my God, he's going to tell us what thought to have well-being. He says, it's the state of no thought. He says, what's the state of no thought? And he says, well, it doesn't mean you don't have thoughts. It just means when we're fully present, every thought is free to flow through us, but we're not holding on to a single one like we are when we're present. That's the state of no thought. He said, that's where our well-being reveals itself to us. So then it becomes very curious how when we're having difficulty, sometimes the last place we go is to drop into presence and no thought, because we haven't learned that that's where all the goodies are, where all the benefits are, where love is waiting, where creativity, where greater awareness are natural and reveal more and more of themselves to us as we fall into, metaphorically, or wake up into this space that, as Natasha says, always here, always present, doesn't go anywhere. It just gets forgotten or covered up when we're caught up in our thinking.
There is one more question, I think, which is from Jill. Can you unmute yourself, Jill?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Natasha and Dicken and everyone else. I have a question. I've been learning about the principles about a year now with Eileen and Sweer. And about a half year ago, in the first weekend I had with Sweer, I had a huge insight, which made me very calm and relaxed, and felt like, I don't know how it feels like to be stoned, but I kind of thought, this must be it, which is kind of strange for a Dutchman not to have been stoned anywhere in your life. So I had been very calm and relaxed for about 2 weeks, and then someone got very angry at me and I dropped out of it, and it never happened again afterwards. So I'm kind of curious, can I go back to that? Does it happen more often, or how does that work?
Yeah.
Can you say something about that?
Go for it, Dicken.
When I'm caught in my thought clouds, a thought storm, there's a lot of tension. when I realize that it's my own thinking, I tend to, without trying, just fall out of the thinking that's causing my tension. It feels really open and like blue sky. And then often when we fall into blue sky, there's sun. Now ego kicks in and says, I want this all the time. This is what health is, only sun. And we become attached to the idea that health is always sunny weather. I don't know about where you live, but the sun gets covered over quite frequently by weather. So that's part of our learning, though. It's good to learn that we can have more sun in our life when we fall out of thinking that burdens us. It's really good to learn that. It's good to enjoy the sun, to be grateful for it, to feel like it helps us grow and nourishes us. That's beautiful. But then there's more to learn, because we're not going to have sun all the time, and we don't want our well-being be dependent upon, I can only be in my well-being when the sun's out. And I'm going to be miserable when it's not. So then we have more insight into what it means to be in a horrible mood, feel lousy, and to fall present. I'm still feeling lousy, but now I'm present. And it's actually very beautiful. So now I'm at peace, feeling lousy. And then I begin to see when I'm at peace, feeling lousy, I had never experienced being comfortable, being uncomfortable before I learned the principles. So I always had some judgment about, oh no, it's raining. Oh geez, no, I want sun. Oh, why is it raining? To be, oh, it's raining. And to be at peace. And then I found out when I'm at peace, when I'm having thought storms, I have all the common sense I need, so I don't scream and yell at my kids at that time, or I don't make poor decisions. That wisdom is always available to us when we're thought away from an openness that allows us to be guided by wisdom. And over time, our definition of well-being changes. That used to be well-being. When Sid would say, look for a good feeling, I go, oh, only when I'm in a good feeling am I in my well-being, and I don't have a good feeling and I want to have it and I got to look for it, and where did it go and what's wrong with me? And then I begin to see when I'm at peace with whatever comes, whatever weather comes through, I'm in a good feeling all the time, even though my moods are changing. And that's an evolution in my understanding that allows me not only to be more at peace when I have weather, but to be more at peace when I'm around friends or family and other people and clients when they have weather, rather than going, oh, no, you should feel good, you know, which in a sense I used to do as a therapist. I'm a little embarrassed. It's sort of like, get over it. Stop feeling that way. It's just thought, can't you see?
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to end by saying that, you know, it's Dickens and my deepest wish with this book, that you understand that you're always home, whatever the weather is, whatever's going on in your circumstance, whatever seems to be your experience in the moment, you're home. The experience is caused by thought, is created by thought, but you're home always. So it's not about being in a specific mood, always being happy or calm. It's about knowing that you're okay even when your experience tells you that you're not. And that's being home. I want to thank Svea and Eileen again for translating our book. We're so grateful. It's language number 8 that's come out now, and there's 2 more in the writings. Portuguese and Russian is on its way. And we're just thrilled that so many people around the world get a chance to read this hopeful message through our work, through many people's work, and of course Sid's work most of all. But thank you so much, Svea and Eline, and thank you everyone for coming. It's really wonderful being with you tonight.
We were going to
you.
just meet the four of us so Natasha and I could thank Sphere and Alina, and they invited all the rest of you. So it turned into you're all part of the party that we're having to celebrate the book coming out in Dutch, and to thank the people. There it is. Whoa.
Oh, I see more copies. Wonderful, wonderful.
You throw a good party, the two of you. So thank you.
Thank you for
Yeah.
being here, and thank you for giving us the chance to do this. It was really a labor of love, and it was really I don't know how to say it. It was an enriching experience. Let's go that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And also tonight, what I really, I'm left with the feeling that we can all allow ourselves to be channels for love and wisdom to come through. And I really kind of sensed it tonight. So yeah, I can leave with that feeling, and it's great. So thank you very much. And thanks everybody.
Thanks everybody for
attending.
coming. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
For attending. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.